The great northern locomotive hissed like an angry beast as it crawled into the Silver Creek station. Steel wheels screamed on the frozen rails, and the sound echoed off the mountains like a warning. The cold was not the kind that simply stung the face. It was the kind that crept under cloth, into bones, and made a person feel small and breakable. Mai and Lynn stepped down onto the wooden platform just as the last light faded from the sky. They were identical in every way, from the fine shape of their jaws to the quick, nervous way their dark eyes searched the crowd. They wore matching gray wool dresses that had been washed and mended too many times. The fabric had grown thin and tired, like an old rag pretending to be clothing. Between them swung one worn carpet bag, held tight by hands turned red from the cold. Inside, it was almost nothing. A change of underclothes, a small comb with broken teeth, a Bible they could not read but kept for comfort, and a tiny jade charm their mother had pressed into Mai's palm before sickness took her. Around them, the station was busy with Christmas Eve joy. Pine boughs were tied to posts. Lantern lights spilled warm and yellow onto the snow. Children ran in heavy coats, laughing as they chased each other around stacks of luggage. Men hauled crates and bundles, and someone nearby carried a small box of bright oranges like it was treasure. Families called out names, and hugs and happy tears filled the air. A fiddle played a sweet holiday song that Mai and Lynn half remembered from street music back in San Francisco. The twins stood still as the crowd moved around them. They waited for a man who never came. Mai's fingers were tight around a telegram, the paper creased from being read again and again. It had arrived days ago in the cramped room they had rented before the train. The words were short and cruel. Arrangements altered. Circumstances prevent meeting obligations. 12 words. No reason, no apology, no offer of help. It was signed by a man named Tobias Finch, the rancher who had promised marriage and a new start. He had claimed he understood something most people did not. He had promised he would not separate them. He had said he would take them both because they were twins and had never lived apart. Now the platform emptied. Wagons rolled away, crunching over packed snow. Goodbyes faded into the night. The station master, a sour man with a thick mustache, began closing shutters and locking doors. He glanced at the 2 Chinese women left behind, his eyes full of suspicion, then turned away without a word. When the last train noise died, the silence felt heavy. Mai and Lynn had 17 cents hidden in a small coin purse. 17 cents would not buy a room. It would not buy a ticket back west. The fare to return to San Francisco might as well have been a mountain made of gold. They had left in a rush, not from hope, but from fear. Their uncle had fallen deep into gambling debt. To pay what he owed, he planned to sell them to a brothel owner near the docks. The twins had heard the deal through thin boards and held each other in the dark, shaking. That night, they stole train money from the lockbox and ran before morning could catch them. They had believed the marriage advertisement was a lifeline. Now it felt like the door of the world had slammed shut. "We cannot stay here," Lynn whispered. Her voice trembled from more than cold. "If we stay on this platform, we will freeze." Mai nodded, her teeth chattering. Their stomachs ached with hunger that had turned sharp and cruel. They had eaten nothing since the day before, only a heel of stale bread on the train, shared in silence. They had saved their coins for what came next, because they feared arriving with nothing. Now they were here, and they still had nothing. They lifted the carpet bag and started walking. Silver Creek looked warm from the outside. Windows glowed along Main Street. Candles flickered behind curtains. People gathered around tables inside their homes, passing plates and smiling at each other. From the church on the hill came a low sound of singing. To the twins, it felt like watching life through glass. They could see the warmth, but it was not meant for them. They passed a saloon where loud piano music spilled into the snow. Men laughed. A door swung open and a rush of heat and smoke rolled out, then vanished as the door slammed shut again. They passed the general store, dark now, with toys displayed in the window. Tin soldiers, a porcelain doll, gifts for children who belonged to someone. On Birch Street, they found a boarding house with a sign that promised rooms. Mai gathered what courage she had left and knocked. A woman opened the door, looked them over from head to toe, and named a price that could have been a joke if her face had not been so hard. $2 a night, paid in advance. Mai thanked her in a small voice and backed away. The door closed with a clean click that sounded final. They kept walking. Snow gathered on their shoulders. The carpetbag pulled at their arms like a weight tied to their future. At the edge of town, where nice homes gave way to stables and storage sheds, they saw light glowing through frosted windows. A small restaurant sign read, "The Iron Skillet." It should have been closed, but someone inside was sweeping and stacking chairs. Mai and Lynn stopped, drawn by the promise of heat. Through the glass, they saw a man sitting alone at a corner table. He was big, broad in the shoulders, dressed like a rancher. A thick sheepskin coat hung on him like armor. His hat sat low, and his hands were rough and weathered as he cut into his steaming steak. A mound of mashed potatoes sat beside it, and the sight of the food made Lynn sway. She grabbed Mai's sleeve to steady herself. Mai swallowed hard. She felt shame burn in her throat. They were standing outside, like beggars, staring at another person's meal like starving dogs. The restaurant owner came out, wiped his hands on an apron, and pointed at the clock. Closing time. The rancher nodded but did not rush. He ate slowly, like a man who had learned not to waste anything. Then his head turned. His eyes met theirs through the glass. Mai's face went hot. She grabbed Lynn's arm. "Come," she whispered. "We must go." Quote. They turned into the wind, stepping off the boardwalk toward the dark street. Snow whipped at their thin skirts. Their shoes were wet. Their legs felt numb. A deep voice stopped them. "San Francisco." They froze and looked back. The rancher stood in the doorway of the Iron Skillet, his shape framed by warm light. Snow landed on his shoulders, but he did not seem to feel it. He studied them for a long moment, from their worn clothes to their single bag, then back to their faces. "You two waiting on someone?" he asked. "No," Mai said, because lying suddenly felt pointless. He nodded once, as if he already understood more than they had said. "They're closing," he said. "But there's still food. The kitchen made too much. Go inside. Tell Arthur that Beckett Thorne said to bring out 2 extra plates." Lynn's voice shook. "We do not have money." Beckett Thorne looked at her like the answer was simple. "Did I ask for money?" His tone held no pity, no mockery. It was plain, like he was stating a fact. He tipped his head toward the door. "Go inside before you freeze to death on my conscience." Mai stood torn between pride and hunger. Pride had kept them alive for years. Pride had helped them run. But pride could not warm their hands or fill their stomachs. Mai bowed her head. "Thank you," she said softly. Beckett stepped aside and let them pass into the heat and light, and for the first time that night, the twins felt like maybe the world had not finished with them yet. The warmth inside the Iron Skillet hit Mai and Lynn so hard it almost hurt. Their fingers tingled as feeling came back, and their cheeks burned like they had been slapped. The smell of cooked meat and bread wrapped around them, rich and real. For a moment, Mai felt dizzy, like she had stepped into a dream that could vanish if she blinked. Arthur, the restaurant owner, was a stout man with kind eyes and a tired face. He paused mid-sweep when he saw them. His gaze flicked to their thin dresses and their wet shoes, then back to their faces. He did not smile right away, but he did not scowl either. Mai forced her voice steady. "Beckett Thorne said to bring out 2 extra plates." Arthur's eyebrows lifted, and then his mouth softened into a small smile. "Beckett said that, did he?" He set the broom aside. "All right then, sit close to the stove. That's the warmest spot." They chose a table near the pot-bellied stove, close enough to feel the heat rolling off its iron belly. They did not sit too close to Beckett, but they could see him from where they were. He had returned to his corner table and kept eating like nothing had happened. He did not stare at them. He did not watch them like they were a strange show. That alone felt like a gift. Arthur disappeared into the back. In minutes, he returned with 2 plates that looked far too full for people who had almost frozen outside. A steak lay across each plate, dark and glossy with juices. Mashed potatoes sat beside it, steaming, with a small pool of butter melting on top. There were carrots that smelled sweet, and a thick slice of bread that looked like it could fill a person's whole chest with warmth. Lynn's hands trembled as she reached for her fork. Mai placed her palm on Lynn's wrist, not to stop her, but to steady her. They ate slowly at first, trying to hold on to dignity. But hunger is stronger than manners when it is sharpened into pain. After a few bites, they ate like people who had been starving for days. Each mouthful felt like life returning. The meat was tender, the potatoes were soft and rich, the bread was warm enough to make Mai's eyes sting. She kept her face down so no one would see the tears gathering. She told herself it was only the heat, only the sudden change from cold to comfort, but in her heart, she knew it was more than that. It was the feeling of being helped without being made small. Arthur came back with coffee, 3 cups in his hands. He set one in front of Mai, one in front of Lynn, then refilled Beckett's cup without a word. The coffee was strong and hot. Mai wrapped both hands around the mug and held on like it was a small fire she could keep. Mai lifted her eyes and spoke toward the room, her voice quiet but clear. "Thank you for the meal. It is the finest thing we have eaten." Quote. Arthur waved his hand like he did not want to hear praise. "Beckett paid for it," he said. "I just cooked it." Mai and Lynn looked toward Beckett then. Really looked. He had taken off his hat and set it beside him. Under the brim, his face was weathered, with lines that spoke of wind and hard work. He looked to be in his mid-30s, maybe younger, but life had carved him deeper than years alone could. His dark hair curled slightly at his collar. His eyes were steady, not cold, not warm, just honest. Lynn swallowed and spoke carefully. "We will repay you, sir, when we are able." Beckett took a slow sip of coffee. "No need." Mai's lips parted. "But you do not know us." "I know enough," he said. "It's winter. You were freezing. That's all." His simple answer left Mai with nothing to argue. She felt Lynn's hand brush hers under the table, a small sign of fear and gratitude mixed together. Arthur began putting chairs down and banking the stove, getting ready to close for real. He glanced at Mai and Lynn with a look that held concern. "You got somewhere to sleep tonight?" Quote. The question dropped like a stone into the quiet. Mai wanted to lie, to say yes, to protect what little pride she had left, but the truth sat heavy and plain in her mouth. "Not yet," she admitted. Arthur let out a breath and rubbed the back of his neck. Then he looked at Beckett, and Beckett looked back. It was not a long look, but it was enough. 2 men who understood what cold could do to a person and what the night could steal. Arthur reached behind the counter and pulled out a scrap of paper. "My cousin Martha runs a boarding house on Maple Street," he said. "Yellow house, blue door. She keeps a spare room for hard times. If you work, she feeds you. If you clean, she gives you a bed. It's not fancy, but it's warm." Mai sat up straighter at the word work. Work was something they understood. Work was something they could offer without shame. "We can work," she said quickly. "We are used to hard work." Arthur nodded like he believed her. He drew a simple map with a pencil and handed it over. "Tell her Arthur sent you. She'll take you in." Quote. Mai folded the paper carefully and tucked it into her sash like it was precious. As they stood, gathering the carpet bag, Beckett rose too. "Cold walk," he said. "I'm going that direction." Lynn opened her mouth to refuse, but the wind outside rattled the window glass, and Mai could still feel the bite of it in her bones. Pride did not matter if the night killed them. "All right," Mai said. They stepped back outside, and the cold slapped them again, but now it felt different. They were full. Their hands were warmer. And there was a man beside them, carrying their carpet bag like it weighed nothing. The town looked even more alive now, like it was showing off what they did not have. Music drifted from the church. Candlelight glowed behind curtains. Snow fell in soft sheets, turning the street into a quiet white road. Beckett kept his pace slow for them. After a few minutes he spoke, his voice calm. "You really from San Francisco?" "Yes," Mai said. He nodded once. "Long way for two young women to travel." Lynn's voice was careful, testing him. "We came for marriage." Quote. Beckett's steps did not change, but something in his jaw tightened. "To Tobias Finch?" Mai looked down. "Yes." He was quiet a moment. Then he said, "He sent that telegram." "Yes," Mai whispered. Beckett breathed out through his nose, a sound like he was holding back words. "Men do that sometimes," he said at last. "They promise more than they can give." Mai felt anger rise, sharp and hot, and then it faded into tiredness. "We had no other choice," she said. Beckett glanced at her, and his eyes held something she did not expect. Not pity, not blame, respect. Like he understood what it meant to take a risk when the other option was worse. The yellow house with the blue door appeared through the falling snow. Smoke rose from its chimney. A lamp burned in the front window. It looked like safety made into wood and light. Beckett stepped up first and knocked. The door opened, and a woman stood there with strong hands and watchful eyes. She wore an apron and a tired expression, but she did not look away from them like they were dirt on her porch. "You must be the twins," she said, her voice firm but not unkind. "Arthur mentioned you." Mai's throat tightened. "Yes, ma'am. Come inside," the woman said. "You're freezing." They stepped into warmth again, into the smell of soap and cinnamon. A little girl peeked around the woman's skirt, her eyes wide with curiosity. Beckett set down the carpetbag and tipped his hat. "Martha," he said, like they knew each other well. "Beckett," Martha replied, and then she looked at the twins again. "You can sleep tonight. Tomorrow we talk about work." Mai felt Lynn's hand grip hers tighter, and for the first time in days the tight knot in her chest loosened. But before the door could close, Martha's eyes moved past them to the street, and her face changed, just slightly. "Did you come from the station?" she asked. Mai nodded. Martha hesitated, then walked to a small table by the wall and picked up an envelope. "This arrived at my house by mistake," she said slowly. "The postman thought it belonged to the Finch bride. When he realized it did not, he left it with me and told me to keep it, just in case." Mai reached for it, her fingers suddenly numb again, but not from cold. On the front, in rough handwriting, were the words, "To the Finch brides." Mai held the envelope like it might burn her. Lynn leaned in, her breath caught. Beckett's voice was low behind them. "You should read that." Mai broke the seal, and as she unfolded the paper inside, she felt a sick fear crawl back into her stomach. Because sometimes the worst news comes after the first kindness, not before. Martha closed the door against the wind and led Mai and Lynn into the kitchen. The room was small, but it was warm. A kettle sat on the stove. A single lamp made the shadows soft instead of sharp. The little girl behind Martha's skirt kept staring at the twins, like she was looking at something rare and beautiful. Mai held the envelope with both hands. Her fingers shook as she broke the seal. She unfolded the letter slowly, as if the paper might cut her. Lynn leaned close, reading with her eyes even before Mai spoke. The letter was from Tobias Finch's brother. His name was Caleb Finch. The words were plain and heavy. Tobias had died 2 weeks before, sudden and painful, from a sickness in his belly. Caleb wrote that the ranch was deep in debt and would be sold. He wrote that there was no place for any bride now, not even one, and he begged them to stay away for their own safety. Then came the line that made Mai's throat go dry. Caleb wrote that someone had been sending telegrams in Tobias's name after Tobias died. Caleb did not know who. He only knew Tobias's papers had been handled by many hands, and money had gone missing. He warned them not to trust anyone who claimed to speak for the Finch ranch. Mai lowered the letter. Her stomach felt hollow again, even with food inside it. Lynn's hand slid into Mai's under the edge of the table, tight and steady. "So he did not refuse us," Lynn whispered. "He was dead." Martha's face softened. "I am sorry," she said. That kind of grief is cruel, even when you never met the man. Beckett stood near the door, his hat in his hands. His eyes were dark in the lamplight, and his jaw was set hard. He looked like a man who did not like tricks, and liked them even less when they hurt the weak. Someone used his name, Beckett said. That means someone is still looking for something. Mai felt fear crawl up her spine. What could they want from us? Beckett's voice stayed calm. Sometimes they want money. Sometimes they want control. Sometimes they just want to hurt someone who cannot fight back. Martha poured hot coffee into cups and pushed two of them toward the twins. You will sleep here tonight, she said, firm like a rule. In the morning, we talk about work. I do laundry for ranchers and families. There is always washing, always mending. If you work, you eat. If you work, you stay. Mai nodded quickly. We will work. The little girl stepped forward, holding a tin cookie in her small hand. I am Daisy, she said. Are you really the same? Lynn managed a small smile. Yes. Daisy's eyes went wide. That is like magic. Martha touched Daisy's shoulder. Let them rest now. Quote, that night, Mai and Lynn slept in a narrow room under a thick quilt that smelled like clean soap. They were still afraid, but the fear was quieter in a warm bed. In the dark, Lynn whispered that their mother's jade charm felt warm against Mai's skin, like a small promise. Morning came gray and cold. The twins went to work without being asked. They scrubbed floors. They carried water. They helped Martha sort laundry by the stove. Their hands were sore, but their eyes were steady. Hard work was not new to them. It was one thing the world had taught them well. By the third day, Martha trusted them with everything. She gave them real meals and let them sit at the table like family. Daisy followed them everywhere, asking questions, copying their words, laughing when they laughed. For the first time in a long time, Mai heard Lynn laugh without pain behind it. Beckett did not disappear from their lives either. He came into town for supplies, then stopped by the yellow house as if it was part of the same trip. Sometimes he brought a sack of potatoes. Sometimes he brought venison wrapped in cloth. Once he brought a small bag of sugar, a rare treat, and Daisy hugged his leg like he was a hero from a story. He did not speak much, but he watched the twins with a quiet attention. He noticed their hands, raw from soap and cold water. He noticed how they moved together, like one mind in two bodies. He noticed how they kept their heads down in town, avoiding eyes that carried hate. Silver Creek was not kind to strangers, and it was even less kind to two poor Chinese women. Men in the streets stared too long. Women in shops whispered and turned away. One afternoon, a boy threw a snowball packed hard as a rock. It hit Lynn's shoulder and made her flinch. The boy ran off laughing while his friends cheered. Mai wanted to chase him. Lynn grabbed her sleeve and shook her head. No, she whispered, we stay quiet. That night, Beckett arrived while Martha was folding laundry. He saw the bruise forming on Lynn's shoulder as she lifted a basket. His eyes sharpened. Who did that? He asked. It was nothing, Lynn said fast. Beckett's mouth tightened. Nothing does not leave marks. Martha gave the twins a look that asked them not to lie. Mai swallowed and told him what happened. Beckett listened without interrupting. When Mai finished, he nodded once. Tomorrow, he said, I will speak to the sheriff. The sheriff will not care, Martha said, bitter and tired. He cares about folks like him, not folks like them. Beckett's gaze moved to the window, where the street lay dark and silent. Then I will make him care. 2 days later, trouble came in the worst way. A man walked into town wearing a long coat and a city hat, the kind that did not belong in the mountain wind. He went straight to the station first, then the saloon, then the general store. By late afternoon, whispers chased him down the street like smoke. That evening, Martha was serving stew when there was a hard knock on the door. Not a neighbor's knock, not a friendly knock. It was the knock of someone who believed the door belonged to him. Martha opened it only a few inches. A tall man stood outside, clean-shaven, his eyes sharp and cold. Two other men waited behind him, shifting like they were eager for a fight. "I'm looking for two Chinese girls," the man said. "Twins. Came in on the Great Northern." Martha's hand stayed on the door. "No one like that here." The man smiled without warmth. "Do not lie to me. I know they are in Silver Creek. I have papers. They stole money from their family. They belong to a man back in San Francisco, and I'm here to bring them back." Mai's blood turned to ice. She had not heard the uncle's name, but she knew this kind of threat. She saw Lynn's face go pale. Daisy clutched Martha's skirt, confused and scared. Martha's voice rose stronger than her small body. "They belong to no one." The man's smile fell away. He pushed the door harder. "Open up, lady. You do not want trouble." A shadow moved behind the men, and then Beckett Thorne stepped into the porch light like a wall of muscle and winter steel. He had come without anyone noticing, and now he stood with his shoulders squared, his eyes locked on the stranger's face. "You got trouble already," Beckett said, low and steady. "It's standing right here." The city man looked him over and sneered. "And who are you supposed to be?" Beckett did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "I'm the man who shared his plate with them on Christmas Eve," he said. "And I'm the man who will bury you in the snow if you take one step inside this house." The porch went silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. The stranger's eyes flicked toward the two men behind him. He tried to look brave, but fear showed in the tight corners of his mouth. "This is not your business," he said. Beckett took one slow step forward. "It is, now." Mai held Lynn's hand so hard it hurt. She understood in that moment that the kindness of one meal had turned into something bigger. A promise. A line drawn in the snow. And she also understood something else. The men who had come for them would not leave easily. The stranger's breath made a thin cloud in the porch light. He stared at Beckett like he was trying to measure him, like he was deciding if threats could turn into action. Beckett did not move again. He did not have to. His size, his stillness, and the calm in his voice said more than shouting ever could. The man lifted his chin. "You cannot stop me," he said. "Those girls are property. Their uncle signed papers. They stole money. I'm here to collect." Martha's hand tightened on the door. "They are not property," she snapped. "They are human beings." The man's eyes slid toward Martha with a look that held contempt. "Stay out of it, woman." Beckett's voice dropped even lower. "Watch your mouth." One of the men behind the stranger shifted closer, his boots scraping the porch boards. "We do not want a fight," he said, but his tone sounded like a lie. Beckett's eyes never left the stranger. "Then, walk away." The stranger's jaw flexed. He took a small step toward the crack of the door, like he meant to force it. Beckett moved fast, quicker than Mai thought a man that big could move. He grabbed the stranger by the front of his coat and slammed him back against the porch post hard enough to make the wood creak. "Listen close," Beckett said. "You do not come into this house. You do not touch them. You do not even speak their names again in this town." The stranger tried to pull free. Beckett held him like a child. The two men behind him reached toward their belts, and Martha gasped, but Beckett's head turned slightly, and his stare was cold as river ice. "Try it," he said to them, "and I swear you will not see another sunrise." For a long beat, nobody moved. The wind moaned through the fence posts. Daisy began to cry softly into Martha's skirt. The stranger's courage cracked. It showed in his eyes first, then in his voice. "You think you are a hero," he hissed, "but you are only delaying the truth. They belong to someone back home." Beckett shoved him away, not gentle, not cruel, just final. The stranger stumbled, caught himself, and wiped his mouth with the back of his glove. His eyes burned with hate, but fear kept him from stepping forward again. "This town is not yours," Beckett said, "and they are not going anywhere." The stranger backed down the steps, his men following. "Fine," he said, voice tight. "I'll talk to the sheriff. We will do this legal." "Go ahead," Beckett said. "I'll be there." When the men disappeared into the falling snow, Martha shut the door and locked it with shaking hands. The kitchen felt too quiet after the storm of voices. Mai and Lynn stood frozen, their fingers tangled together. Mai's heart beat so hard she thought it might break her ribs. She had lived with fear for so long that her body did not know how to let it go. Beckett turned to them. His face had softened, but his eyes were still sharp. "Did you steal money?" he asked, plain and direct. Mai swallowed. "Yes," she said, "from our uncle's lockbox. We took train fare and ran." "And why did you run?" he asked. Lynn lifted her chin, trembling but honest. "Because he was going to sell us," she said, "to a place where we would not come back from. We ran to stay alive." Beckett nodded once. "Then you did what you had to do." Martha exhaled like she had been holding her breath for years. "What happens now?" she asked. Beckett looked at the window, at the snow piling against the glass. "Now we do it the right way," he said. "Tomorrow we go to the sheriff. If he does not listen, we go to the judge in Gunnison, and if papers exist, we tear them apart with truth." Mai stared at him. "You would do that for us?" Beckett's gaze met hers. "I already am." That night, Beckett stayed in Martha's front room with a rifle across his knees. He did not sleep much. Mai and Lynn lay in their narrow bed, listening to the house settle and creak. Fear still lived in the corners, but now it shared space with something new. Safety. Not perfect, not complete, but real. In the morning, Beckett drove them into town in his wagon. The sky was pale, and the air smelled like fresh snow. Mai saw people look at them as they passed. Some stared, some whispered. But Beckett sat tall on the bench seat like a mountain, and nobody stepped into their path. At the sheriff's office, the stranger was already there. He smiled when he saw them, like he had been waiting for this moment. The sheriff, a thick man with sleepy eyes, looked annoyed by the whole thing. "Sheriff," the stranger said quickly, "these women are stolen property. I have papers. Their family wants them returned to San Francisco." The sheriff looked at Beckett. "You bringing trouble into my town again, Thorne?" Beckett set his hands on the counter, steady as stone. "I'm bringing truth," he said. "Those papers are a lie, and you know it's wrong to treat people like cattle." The stranger slapped documents down. "Signed agreements," he said. "Law is law." Beckett did not even glance at the papers. "Law also says you cannot sell a person," he replied. "And if you are too lazy to do your job, I will ride to Gunnison today and put your name in front of a judge who is not too lazy." The sheriff's face reddened. He hated being pushed. He hated being challenged, but he hated Beckett's stubbornness even more because he could not break it. Mai's voice came out small but clear. "We are not criminals," she said. "We ran because we were going to be hurt." The sheriff squinted at her like he was seeing her as a person for the first time, not a problem. Lynn stepped forward, too. She lifted her sleeve and showed the fading bruise from the packed snowball. "And here," Lynn said, "boys in your town do this and laugh. We stay quiet. We work. We do not harm anyone." The sheriff's mouth opened, then closed. He did not want to care, but the room had gone still. Even Arthur had come in and stood near the door, arms crossed, eyes hard. Beckett leaned in. "Sheriff," he said, "you want peace in your town? Then you protect the weak from wolves who dress up in city coats." The sheriff stared at the stranger again. "Where did Tobias Finch die?" he asked. The stranger hesitated, just a little too long. Beckett's eyes narrowed. "He doesn't know," he said, "because he never knew Tobias. He's just a collector sent by a gambler." Quote. The sheriff grabbed the papers and read. His eyes moved over the words, then stopped. He looked up sharply. "This is not stamped," he said. "No court seal, no witness listed from this territory." The stranger's smile slipped. "It's still binding," he snapped. The sheriff stood. "Not here it isn't," he said. "Not without proof, not without a judge. You want to take them, you bring a proper warrant." The stranger's face twisted. "You are making a mistake." "Maybe," the sheriff said, "but you are leaving town today." The stranger's anger burst. He lunged toward Mai, fast, like a cornered animal. Mai flinched, but Beckett was already moving. He shoved the man back so hard he fell into the stovepipe stand and crashed to the floor. The sheriff drew his gun. Arthur stepped in. The room filled with shouting, boots scraping and hard breathing. "Enough," the sheriff roared. The stranger scrambled up, wild-eyed. He looked from Beckett to the sheriff and saw no opening. He spat on the floor, grabbed his hat, and stormed out with his men. The sheriff pointed at Beckett. "You," he growled. "I should throw you in a cell for starting fights." Beckett held his gaze. "Then throw me in," he said, "but they leave free." The sheriff looked at Mai and Lynn again. He saw their thin faces, their tired eyes, their hands rough from work. Something shifted in him. Not kindness, but something close to shame. He lowered his gun. "Get them out of my office," he muttered. Then he added, quieter, "And if those men come back, you come straight to me." Outside, the air felt lighter. Mai realized she had been holding her breath since the night before. They rode back to Martha's house in silence. Halfway there, Lynn spoke, her voice soft. "We are safe?" Beckett's gaze stayed on the snowy road ahead. "For now," he said, "and I intend to make it for always." Days passed, and no one returned. The twins worked hard, and the town slowly learned they were not leaving. Some people stayed cruel, but others changed. A woman at the market began to greet them. A ranch wife asked if they could sew. Daisy bragged about them at school until even the boys stopped throwing things. One evening in early spring, Beckett came to the yellow house and stood by the kitchen table. His hat was in his hands again, and Mai noticed he only did that when something mattered. "I've got a question," he said. Martha raised an eyebrow. "You got another sack of potatoes to donate?" Beckett gave a small smile, then looked at Mai and Lynn. "I want you on my ranch," he said, "not as hired help, not as charity, as family." Mai's throat tightened. "Why?" Beckett's voice was steady, but emotion sat under it like fire under ash. "Because you came here with nothing and still held each other up," he said. "Because you work harder than anyone I know. Because you made my life less empty without even trying." Lynn's eyes filled. "But the town," she whispered. "People will talk." "They already talk," Beckett said. "Let them. I've lived alone long enough to stop caring what fools think." Mai looked at Lynn. They did not need words. They had never needed words between them. Lynn nodded, tears slipping free. Mai turned back to Beckett. "We will come," she said. "Together." "Together," Beckett repeated, like a promise. When they rode out to his ranch for the first time, the valley opened wide and bright under the spring sun. The house sat near a creek that ran clear and steady. The barn stood strong. Smoke rose from the chimney like a signal. Beckett helped them down from the wagon, then carried their carpet bag inside like it still weighed nothing. Mai walked through the doorway and felt something shift deep in her chest. It was not just shelter. It was a beginning. That night, they sat at Beckett's table, the same table where he had once eaten alone. Now there were 3 plates, 3 cups, 3 places by the fire. Beckett lifted his coffee mug, not fancy, not proud, just real. "To new starts," he said. Mai lifted hers. Lynn lifted hers. And for the first time in a long time, Christmas Eve felt like it had truly meant something. One shared plate had turned into a shared life,